I've made it a point on this channel to speculate whenever new domains or trademarks of new Atlus games are revealed. And yesterday, a notable leaker in the community, Midori, revealed that Atlus had registered multiple domains earlier this month. Those being MegaTen 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10.jp/.com/.net. And as fans have already pointed out, MegaTen5.jp was the domain name for Shin Megami Tensei 5, meaning that these new domains are likely for Shin Megami Tensei 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. In his own video on the topic where I first learned of this earlier today, DavidCastJRPG also gave some additional speculation that these are merely upcoming SMT related projects and that these domains could be reused for the actual corresponding numbered SMT game in the future. While I don't want to say that this is impossible, it also doesn't quite feel right, or is at least extremely peculiar if the case. I am no expert on Japanese video game legal domain and trademark registration, nor do I have any insider information, but if that was the case, why use these domain names in the first place? Why not use something else that wouldn't be as associated to an established IP? At least that would be the logic if they wanted to keep it quiet. Digital Devil Saga HD, a game that David and many others in the community have been pushing as a possibility, even in my own comments, doesn't actually have much to do with MegaTen, arguably even less so than Persona, other than the preserved edge and spiritually influenced thematic imagery and symbolism. Soul Hackers Free, something that I was actually wondering if it were the third game, given the time frame, Atlus's tendency to emphasize duologies, and many dangling threads left of Soul Hackers 2, is also something I can't really see as MegaTen6.jp, given that Soul Hackers 2 had more in common with Persona, and Soul Hackers Free.jp would have probably been more organic, given that Atlus registered Soul Hackers 2.jp. And I also think that a potential remake is unlikely to be one of these domains as well. Shin Megami Tensei 4 HD, the game that I have been most hoping for a remake, would have been MegaTen4.jp or something similar. To clarify, this doesn't mean that these aren't possibilities, I just don't think that they're likely, and these are all probably something else. Either new mainline entries or new spin-offs that Atlus wants to keep under wraps for a while longer, and thus not reveal the names of, if their final names have even been decided on, given that they could be in the project insert name here phase of development. Regardless, this does still raise a lot of questions, namely why is Atlus working on 5 different SMT games at once, as well as their release date? We can assume that the later the number, the later the release date, with my earliest guess being a trailer or some other form of confirmation for MegaTen6.jp in 2025 or 2026, but any other timeline beyond that would be a stretch given how little we know and how infrequently Atlus actually releases SMT games. At this point, I'd like to remind people that it was confirmed that a third game was in tangential development with SMT5 and Soul Hackers 2, and given this time frame, it seems very likely that this was going to be MegaTen6.jp, and it's probably going to be Shin Megami Tensei 6, but if so, why? Why was SMT6 worked on tangentially with SMT5? And if all of these are indeed mainline titles, why are they in development now? All together, all at once, so many at once. Was the unearned momentum of SMT5 really enough to push for more mainline games to enter development? Not impossible, but more importantly, does this mean that there is any hope for them to be good? I've made no secret my contempt for recent SMT games, especially 5. Going in, I thought that 4 Apocalypse would be an anomaly. An honest mess up that no other game in this series could sink so low as. Then SMT5 came around and I had to eat those words. SMT5 is the worst game in the whole series. Its plot is nonsense, themes contradictory, characters rudimentary, and when its plot isn't wasting my time, it's just boring. This game was praised for its gameplay and I seriously have no idea why. Level is such a detrimental force in damage calculation that it renders most strategies moot, made all the worse by other factors that once had a tangible impact like buffs and debuffs, being nerfed to be useless. Magatsui's skills do nothing but reduce the tedium. Exploration isn't much better when the world is empty. Previous SMT games had taken place during or after the apocalypse, but they'd been brimming with personality. Demons operated shops, and if one was in the overworld, they had something to say, while the dungeons were immersed in atmosphere. In SMT5, the colors are at once vibrant and yet bland, disallowing any sense of awe to the scale of a destroyed city, or for the impact of the ruins to feel real. Not helping is the fact that the demons are just generic enemies in all places. Shops are relegated singularly to leyline founts, and the demons in the overworld rarely have anything to add beyond the occasional questline. All this makes SMT5's Tokyo feel infested, abandoned by all but pests rather than lived in, now occupied by the demonic forces that moved in and made home in the absence of humans. 90s games and some of their ports may have had more technical issues, but at least they were about something. They had a theme, an idea, an identity to them. I may not have enjoyed playing Devil Summoner Soul Hackers, and the characters were just as, if not more, baseline than SMT5's cast, and the silent protagonist is as poorly implemented, but that game had something to say about technology and its integration into society. It had a theme. It had something. What? I repeat, what does SMT5 have to offer other than being a generic JRPG? And I do mean generic. SMT is renowned for its edge and thought-provoking subject matter, dealing with ideas that most other games won't deign to touch in favor of a power fantasy. SMT5 is that power fantasy in an SMT skin. You are not a silent protagonist in a tough position where the fate of the world and where it heads is subject to your decisions and ethics, and what is right and wrong is open to interpretation. Instead, you play as a generic protagonist with as much personality as an anime isekai harem protagonist, complete with the superpower of being a babe magnet who gets hot women to worship the ground he walks on by virtue of being the bare minimum of nice to them, and who becomes God through her uncritical support on a journey where the game strokes your ego along the way for essentially being nothing but a wave rider. Choices don't matter beyond the one where you choose the ending, making the ones that appear whenever they do feel haphazard and a waste of time, with no payoff to their inclusion, and giving the protagonist a personality, however basic, it prevents the player from fully playing as the protagonist and instead must play as this character as is, even if they are still designed to be a self-insert. Just a self-insert for the sake of playing a badass who doesn't have to think of strategy while still being praised by everyone uncritically, rather than telling a story that could only happen with a silent protagonist. And given the context of the Vengeance trailers, once again emphasizing the ego-stroking godhood of the protagonist and the misplaced focus in characterizing the characters who should have no personality so as to be filled by the characters and their individualism, I can't imagine any future SMT games developed at this time to be any better. That all said, because so many games are being worked on all at once, there is still a chance for hope. During the development of SMT4, interviews emphasized quite heavily the dissonance between older and fresher developers. Multiple games worked on all at once could mean that someone in Atlus has decided to assign conflicting creative visions to different projects in order to mitigate this problem. We can't know for sure what the quality of these games will be until they are released, but hopefully nothing will ever again be as bad as SMT5, and I won't ever again have to eat my own words here. This is not the video that I had intended to make and upload today, which is why some of the editing is a bit basic in some places, but I'd still appreciate a like if you enjoyed what I had to say, and perhaps a subscribe if you liked my content. This video is the first in a marathon of content to be released this week, so click the bell so you can be alerted to my next video when it goes up tomorrow. Or perhaps you'd consider watching the video on screen now. I am Bilal Kun, and I hope everybody has a great rest of the day.